I'm 82 years old. My wife Margaret is 81. We've been married for 58 years. And if you're in a relationship right now, married or not, you need to hear what I'm about to tell you. Because the mistakes we made, the ones that nearly destroyed us 3 separate times, are the exact same mistakes I see tearing apart young couples today. And the worst part? Most people don't realize they're making these mistakes until it's too late, until the damage is permanent, until someone walks out the door and doesn't come back. Margaret and I are still together. We're still married. People see us now and they think we've had this beautiful, easy love story. They see 58 years and assume we figured it out early, that we got lucky, that we just naturally knew how to love each other well. They're wrong. We didn't figure it out early. We spent 35 years making each other miserable. 35 years of the same fights, the same resentments, the same patterns that nearly killed our marriage over and over again. And it wasn't until I was 77, lying in a hospital bed after a heart attack, that I finally understood what we'd been doing wrong all along. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to waste 35 years the way we did. I don't want you to wake up one day, decades into your marriage, and realize you've been fighting the wrong battle the entire time. So before you click away, before you tell yourself your relationship is different, just listen. Because I promise you, the patterns that almost destroyed us are probably already showing up in your relationship. You just don't see them yet. My name is Richard, but everyone calls me Rich. I met Margaret in 1965 at a church social in Pennsylvania. I was 23, working at a steel mill. She was 22, teaching 2nd grade at the elementary school. I saw her across the room, and I knew. That sounds like something from a movie, but it's true. I knew I was going to marry her before we ever spoke a word to each other. We dated for 2 years, got married in 1967. I wore a rented tuxedo that was too tight in the shoulders. Margaret wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her. We had a small ceremony, maybe 60 people, and a reception in the church basement with punch and cake. Nothing fancy. But we were happy. At least, we thought we were happy. We were in love, and we thought that was enough. We thought love would carry us through everything, that if we loved each other enough, the rest would just work itself out. We were 25 and 24 years old. We didn't know anything. Our parents had stayed married, but that didn't mean their marriages were good. My parents barely spoke to each other. They lived in the same house, ate at the same table, slept in the same bed, but they were strangers. Margaret's parents fought constantly, screaming matches that would last for hours. So neither of us had a blueprint for what a healthy marriage actually looked like. We just knew we didn't want to end up like them, but we didn't know how to avoid it. The first 10 years of our marriage were intense, passionate, but turbulent. We fought about everything: money, housework, how to raise our kids, where to spend holidays, big things and small things, and we'd make up, we'd apologize, we'd promise to do better, but we never actually addressed the root issues. We just kept having the same fights over and over, with different details but the same underlying problems. It was exhausting, but we stayed. We thought that's what marriage was supposed to be: hard, exhausting, something you survived rather than enjoyed. Then, around year 12, something shifted. We stopped fighting, not because we solved our problems, but because we both gave up. I started shutting down. When Margaret would try to talk to me about something that bothered her, I'd just go silent. I'd leave the room. I'd disappear into the garage for hours, working on projects that didn't need to be done. I'd go to bed early. I'd avoid eye contact at dinner. I thought I was being mature. I thought I was taking the high road by not yelling back, by not engaging in the arguments. But I wasn't taking the high road. I was punishing her with my absence. Margaret would cry. I knew she was crying because I could hear her in the bathroom at night. But I wouldn't go to her. I told myself she needed to calm down first, that we'd talk when things weren't so emotional. But days would pass, sometimes a week, and we still wouldn't talk. The silence would just stretch between us, getting heavier and colder, until eventually we'd both pretend nothing had happened and move on. Except we never actually moved on. We just buried it. And it would come up again later in a different fight with a different trigger, but the same wound underneath. Our daughter Emily was 8 years old during one of these silent stretches. I'd been giving Margaret the cold shoulder for about 5 days. I don't even remember what the original argument was about. Something small, probably, but I was stubborn. And one evening, Emily walked into the kitchen where Margaret was making dinner. I was in the living room, reading the paper, pretending I couldn't hear them. And Emily asked her mother in this small, worried voice, "Why is Daddy always angry?" Margaret told me about that conversation later after Emily was in bed. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table and she said, "Our daughter thinks you're always angry. She's 8 years old and she's scared of you. Not because you yell, but because you disappear. And I can't do this anymore, Rich. I can't be married to someone who punishes me with silence every time we have a problem. Either we learn how to actually communicate, or I'm done." That was the first time Margaret threatened to leave, and I didn't take it seriously. I thought she was being dramatic. I thought she'd cool off and we'd go back to normal. But she didn't cool off. She made an appointment with a marriage counselor, told me I could come with her or not, but she was going. So I went. Mostly because I was embarrassed at the idea of her going alone, of some stranger thinking I was too stubborn to work on my marriage. That counselor, an older woman named Dr. Patterson, she looked at me during our second session and said something I'll never forget. She said, "Richard, silence isn't peaceful. Silence is violence. When you withhold your presence, your words, your engagement, you're telling Margaret that she doesn't deserve your attention, that she's not worth the effort of communication. And that's just as cruel as screaming at her, maybe more so, because at least when you're yelling, you're acknowledging she exists." I wanted to argue, I wanted to defend myself, but I couldn't, because she was right. I had been using silence as a weapon. I thought I was being the bigger person by walking away, but I wasn't walking away to calm down. I was walking away to punish Margaret, to make her feel as small and invisible as I felt during our arguments, and it was destroying both of us. Margaret wasn't innocent either. When I would shut down, she would escalate. She'd follow me from room to room, demanding I talk to her, getting louder and more desperate, which only made me retreat further. We were stuck in this terrible cycle. The more she pushed, the more I withdrew. The more I withdrew, the more she pushed, and neither of us knew how to break it. Dr. Patterson taught us something simple that changed everything. She told me I was allowed to take space, but I had to communicate it. Instead of just disappearing, I had to say, "I need 20 minutes to think, and then I'll come back and we'll talk." And then I had to actually come back. Not the next day, not in a week, in 20 minutes. And Margaret had to learn to give me that space without panicking, without following me, without assuming I was abandoning her. It sounds so simple, almost stupid. But it worked, not immediately. It took months of practice, months of me forcing myself to come back to the conversation even when I didn't want to. Months of Margaret forcing herself to let me walk away without chasing. But slowly, we learned how to fight without destroying each other. We learned that taking a pause doesn't mean giving up. It just means regrouping so you can actually solve the problem instead of just hurting each other. But that was only mistake number one. And fixing that mistake didn't fix our marriage. It just stopped us from actively destroying it. The next mistake took us years to even recognize. By the time we hit our 20s, year 20 of marriage, we'd settled into a routine. The kids were teenagers. I was working long hours at the mill. Margaret had gone back to teaching full time. We were busy, tired, stretched thin, and somewhere in all of that, I think we both started expecting the other person to be everything, to meet every single need. Margaret wanted me to be her best friend, her therapist, her social coordinator, and her romantic partner all at once. She'd get upset if I couldn't drop everything to listen to her problems. She'd get jealous if I went fishing with my buddies on Saturdays. She wanted all of my time, all of my attention, all of my emotional energy. And when I couldn't give it, she felt rejected. And I did the same thing to her. I expected Margaret to be happy with just me, to not need anyone else. When she mentioned wanting to join a book club at the library, I felt threatened. I didn't say it directly, but I made comments. "You're already gone teaching all day. Now you want to be gone at night too?" I made her feel guilty for wanting something that was hers, for wanting friends, interests, a life outside of me and the kids. We suffocated each other. We'd become so enmeshed that we didn't know where one of us ended and the other began. Margaret had stopped seeing her college friends. I'd stopped playing softball with the guys from work. We'd isolated ourselves into this little bubble of just us and the kids, and we thought that was what marriage was supposed to look like. Sacrifice. Putting your spouse first in everything. Never having needs that they couldn't meet. It all came crashing down in year 32. Our youngest had just left for college. The house was suddenly empty. And Margaret, she just fell apart. She stopped getting out of bed, stopped cooking, stopped doing much of anything. I thought maybe it was empty nest syndrome, that she just needed time to adjust. But weeks went by, and she got worse, not better. Finally, I convinced her to see a doctor. The doctor said it was depression and referred her to a therapist. And in one of those therapy sessions, Margaret told the therapist something she'd never told me. She said, "I don't know who I am anymore. For 32 years, I've been Rich's wife and Emily and David and Sarah's mother. And now the kids are gone and Rich works all the time. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself. I don't have friends. I don't have hobbies. I don't have anything that's mine." The therapist suggested Margaret spend some time figuring out who she was outside of being my wife and the kids' mother. And I should have been supportive. I should have encouraged her. But I felt threatened. I felt like if Margaret built a life outside of me, she wouldn't need me anymore. She'd realize she was happier without me. So I pushed back. I told her she was being selfish. That marriage was about sacrifice. That, of course, she'd given things up, but so had I. Margaret moved into the guest room. She didn't ask me. She didn't announce it. One day I came home from work, and her clothes were in the closet in the guest room, and she was sleeping in there. 4 months she stayed in that room. 4 months of living in the same house, but being completely separate. I'd see her in the kitchen in the mornings, and we'd nod at each other like roommates, polite, distant, miserable. I thought our marriage was over. I thought she was just waiting for the right moment to tell me she wanted a divorce. And I was angry about it, but I was also relieved, because the truth is, I was exhausted too. Exhausted from trying to be everything to her. Exhausted from feeling like I was failing every single day because I couldn't make her happy. But then Margaret started making changes. She joined that book club. She started taking painting classes at the community center. She reconnected with an old friend from college who lived 2 towns over. And slowly, she started coming back to life. I could see it. The light returning to her eyes. The way she'd talk about a book she'd read or a painting she was working on. She was becoming herself again. And I realized something that scared me. I didn't really know who that self was. I'd been married to Margaret for 32 years, but I didn't actually know her outside of the roles she played in my life. So I started doing the same thing. I joined a bowling league, started going to the VFW on Friday nights, picked up woodworking, something I'd always been interested in but never made time for. And as we both built lives outside of our marriage, something strange happened. We started liking each other again. We had things to talk about at dinner that weren't just logistics. She'd tell me about her book club discussions. I'd tell her about the coffee table I was building. We were 2 whole people choosing to spend time together instead of 2 halves desperately clinging to each other. Margaret moved back into our bedroom after about 6 months of this. We didn't have some big romantic reconciliation. She just quietly moved her things back one afternoon while I was at work. And that night, when I got into bed, she was there. We didn't talk about it. We just lay there in the dark, not touching, but together. And it felt like a beginning, like maybe we were going to be okay. But we still had more mistakes to work through, and the next one was maybe the worst. For years, decades really, I kept a mental ledger. Every time Margaret criticized me, every harsh word, every comparison to her father who I never measured up to, I remembered it. I didn't write it down. I didn't need to. The list was always there in the back of my mind. And when we'd fight, I'd pull from that list. I'd bring up things from 10, 15, 20 years ago. Things I'd supposedly forgiven, but clearly hadn't. Margaret did the same thing. She remembered every time I forgot an anniversary, every promise I broke, every time I chose work over her or the kids, every moment I disappointed her, she filed it away. And it would come back up later in fights that had nothing to do with the original hurt. I remember this one fight. Must have been around 2005. I'd gone to the grocery store and forgotten to pick up milk. Just milk. Margaret had specifically asked me to get milk because she needed it for dinner, and I forgot. Simple mistake. Happens to everyone. But when I got home and she realized I didn't have the milk, she lost it. Started yelling about how I never listen, how I always forget things, how she can't rely on me for anything. And I started yelling back, telling her she was overreacting, that it was just milk, that I'd go back and get it. But then she brought up the time I forgot our anniversary in 1993. And I brought up the time she threw away my baseball cards in 1987. And suddenly, we're in the kitchen, screaming at each other about things that happened 15 and 18 years ago. and neither of us even remembers what started the fight. The worst part was our son David's wedding. 2003. Beautiful ceremony, nice reception at a country club. Margaret and I were seated at a table with some of David's in-laws, people we barely knew, and somehow we got into an argument about the seating arrangements. Margaret thought we should have been at the head table. I said it was fine where we were, and it escalated. Right there in the middle of our son's wedding reception, we're snapping at each other, and I brought up something Margaret had said about my mother 20 years prior, and she brought up something I'd said about her cooking 15 years earlier. David pulled us aside, took us into a side room away from the guests, and he was furious. Not the gentle, understanding David we'd raised, actually furious. He looked at both of us and said, "This is my wedding day. My wedding day? And you two can't stop yourselves from dragging up ancient history long enough to let me have this one day. What is wrong with you?" I've never felt shame like that. Never. Standing there in my suit, my son looking at me with disgust and disappointment, realizing that Margaret and I had been so caught up in our own resentment that we'd ruined this moment for him. We apologized to David, apologized to his wife, stayed quiet for the rest of the reception. But the damage was done. For years after, whenever David talked about his wedding, there was this look on his face, this sadness, because what should have been his happiest memory was tainted by his parents' inability to let go of the past. That's what resentment does. It doesn't just poison the people holding on to it. It poisons everything around them. Every moment, every relationship, every good thing gets contaminated by bitterness that should have been dealt with years ago. Margaret and I went back to therapy after that. Different therapist this time, a man named Dr. Keller. And he had us do this exercise that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. He had us write down every resentment we were holding on to, every old hurt, every disappointment, every time we felt wronged by the other person. And then we had to read them out loud to each other. It took 3 sessions just to get through the lists. Margaret cried through most of it. So did I, though I tried to hide it. Hearing her read out all the ways I'd failed her over 35 years, all the moments I'd been selfish or thoughtless or cruel, it broke something in me. And reading my list to her, seeing her face as she realized how deeply some of my wounds went, I could see it was breaking her too. But then Dr. Keller did something unexpected. He had us burn the lists, actually burn them, right there in his office in a small metal bowl. He said, "You've acknowledged these hurts. You've spoken them out loud. Now you have to choose. You can keep carrying them, and they will destroy whatever's left of your marriage. Or you can let them go, not forget them, but release them, forgive them, and commit to not bringing them up again." We burned the lists, watched the paper curl and turn black and disappear into ash. And we made a pact right there in that office. No more keeping score, no more bringing up the past in current arguments. If something hurt us, we had to deal with it within 24 hours or let it go completely, not bury it. Actually let it go, forgive it, and move forward. It's been almost 20 years since we burned those lists. And I won't lie to you, it's hard. There are still times I want to bring up something from the past, especially when I feel like I'm losing an argument. Times when I want to throw Margaret's failures in her face to make myself feel justified. But I don't, because I remember David's face at his wedding. I remember the 3 sessions of reading those lists and how much damage we'd done to each other by holding on. Forgiveness isn't a one-time thing. It's not something you do once and then it's done. You have to choose forgiveness every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. Every time a memory of an old hurt pops up, you have to consciously choose to let it go again. Every time your spouse disappoints you in some small way, you have to decide if you're going to hold on to it or release it. And most of the time, you have to release it because holding on will kill you. It'll kill your marriage. It'll kill your ability to experience joy. Margaret and I are 81 and 82 years old now. We've been married 58 years, and people look at us like we're some kind of success story, like we're proof that true love lasts. And I guess in some ways we are, but we're also proof that marriage is work. Constant, difficult, humbling work. We didn't figure it out because we were special or because we loved each other more than other couples. We figured it out because we refused to quit, even when quitting would have been easier. But here's the thing I wish we'd known at 25. Staying together isn't the same as being happy. For 35 years, Margaret and I stayed together. We took pride in that. We weren't divorced like half our friends. We'd made it work. We were committed, but we weren't happy. We were enduring. We were surviving. We were just getting through each day without killing each other. Our 40th anniversary was in 2007. Our kids threw us a party. Family and friends came. People gave speeches about what an inspiration we were, about how rare it is to see a couple make it 40 years. And I stood there, Margaret's hand in mine, smiling and accepting congratulations. And I felt like a fraud. Because, yes, we'd made it 40 years. But how many of those years had actually been good? How many had been spent genuinely enjoying each other instead of just tolerating each other? I started thinking about divorce around that time. Not seriously. I never would have left Margaret, but I fantasized about it. About what my life would look like if I was alone, if I didn't have to deal with her moods, her expectations, her disappointments in me. I thought about moving into a small apartment, having my own space, answering to no one. And some days, that fantasy felt more appealing than my real life. I never told Margaret I was thinking these things, but I think she knew, because she was thinking the same things. She told me later, years later, that during that time, she would sometimes drive past apartment complexes and wonder what it would feel like to live in one, to have her own place, to not have to share space with someone who felt more like an obligation than a partner. We were coasting, going through the motions. We'd been together so long that leaving felt impossible, but staying felt unbearable. And I think we would have continued like that, slowly growing more distant and resentful until one of us died. Except something happened that changed everything. 5 years ago, I had a heart attack. I was 77. I'd been having chest pains for a few days, but ignored them. Thought it was just heartburn or stress. Margaret told me to go to the doctor. I said I was fine. Then one morning, I was in the garage working on a bookshelf, and the pain got so bad I couldn't breathe. I managed to get to the phone and call 911. Managed to unlock the front door before I collapsed. I woke up in the hospital. Tubes in my arms, machines beeping, Margaret sitting in the chair next to my bed. She looked terrible. Eyes red from crying, hair a mess, wearing the same clothes she'd slept in. The doctor came in and explained that I'd had a massive heart attack. that they'd done surgery to put in stents, that I was lucky to be alive. Lucky. That's what everyone kept saying. You're so lucky. Lucky the heart attack happened at home and not while I was driving. Lucky Margaret knew to call the ambulance. Lucky I got to the hospital in time. Lucky the surgery worked. Everyone was so focused on the luck that they didn't ask the real question. What was I going to do with this second chance? I laid there in that hospital bed for 3 days, and I thought about my life. 55 years on this planet, and what did I have to show for it? A marriage that felt more like a prison sentence than a partnership. Kids who loved me but didn't really know me. A house full of things that didn't matter. A life I'd spent enduring instead of enjoying. On the third night, Margaret fell asleep in the chair next to my bed. She'd been there every day, all day, barely leaving even to eat. And I watched her sleep. Really looked at her for the first time in years. She'd gotten old. We both had. But I'd stopped noticing. I'd stopped seeing her as a person, as Margaret. She'd just become the background noise of my life. And I realized, lying there watching her sleep with her mouth slightly open and her hand resting on my bed, that I'd wasted so much time. When she woke up, I told her, if I survive this, if I get to leave this hospital and go home, I want to spend whatever time I have left actually enjoying you. My voice cracked when I said it. I hadn't cried in years, but I was crying then. I don't want to spend the rest of my life just coexisting with you. I want to know you again. I want to like you again. I want us to be happy. Margaret started crying too, and she said, I want that too. I want that so much. And we held hands. Actually held hands, not just touched out of obligation, but held on to each other like we meant it. And it felt like the first honest moment we'd had in decades. Recovery was hard. I couldn't work for months. Had to relearn how to do basic things without exhausting myself. But Margaret was there. She took care of me in a way she hadn't in years. Not out of duty, but out of something that felt like love. Real love. Not the tired, resentful love we'd been operating under, but something deeper. Something that felt like choice. And I started making changes. Started actually communicating instead of shutting down. Started telling Margaret when I was hurt instead of adding it to my mental ledger. Started asking her about her day and actually listening to the answer instead of just waiting for my turn to talk. Small things. Things I should have been doing all along. But they made a difference. Margaret made changes too. She stopped expecting me to be everything. Stopped taking my silence as rejection. Started telling me what she needed instead of expecting me to read her mind. And slowly, over months and then years, we started building something new. Not trying to go back to how we were when we first got married, but creating something different, something better. The last 5 years have been the best years of our marriage. And that's tragic. That's the thing that keeps me up at night. We've been married 58 years, and only the last 5 have been genuinely good. We wasted 53 years. Wasted them fighting, resenting, hurting each other, when we could have been doing this the whole time. Building each other up. Enjoying each other. Choosing each other every day instead of just being stuck with each other. I look at young couples today and I see us. I see them making the same mistakes we made, keeping score, expecting their partner to meet every need, using silence as a weapon, holding on to resentments from years ago, staying together but not being happy. And I want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them and tell them, don't do this. Don't waste decades the way we did. Fix it now. Learn to communicate now. Let go of the grudges now, before you wake up at 82 years old and realize how much time you threw away. Here's what I know now that I wish I'd known at 25. Marriage is not about finding someone who makes you happy. It's about choosing someone and then choosing them again every single day, even on the days you don't feel like it, especially on those days. It's about forgiving them for their failures and letting them forgive you for yours. It's about building separate lives that complement each other instead of building one life that suffocates both of you. It's about communication, real, honest, immediate communication, not waiting days or weeks to address something that bothered you, saying it now, in the moment, calmly, without attacking. When you did this, it hurt me. Can we talk about it? That's it. That's the whole formula. But it's so much harder than it sounds because it requires vulnerability. It requires admitting you were hurt instead of pretending you're fine. It requires giving your spouse the chance to hurt you again by rejecting your feelings. It's about letting go of resentments, of old hurts, of the fantasy of who you thought your spouse would be. You have to love the person in front of you, not the person you imagined when you were 25. People change, you've changed, they've changed, and you have to keep choosing the person they've become, not mourning the loss of who they used to be. It's about being a team. You're not opponents. You're not keeping score of who does more or who's more tired or who sacrificed more. You're partners. And sometimes one partner carries more weight, and sometimes the other does. And that's okay, because you're moving through life together, and the goal isn't to make sure everything's exactly even. The goal is to both make it to the finish line. Margaret and I are in our 80s. We don't have another 58 years. We might have 10 if we're lucky, probably less. And I'm grateful for the time we have. But I'm angry too. Angry at myself for wasting so much time. Angry that I let pride and stubbornness and fear keep me from the happiness that was always available to us if we'd just been brave enough to reach for it. If you're in a relationship right now and you're holding on to resentment, let it go today, not tomorrow, not after you've made your point or after they've apologized enough or after you feel like they've suffered appropriately. Today, right now, because that resentment is poisoning you. It's poisoning your relationship. And every day you hold on to it is another day you're choosing bitterness over connection. If you're using silence as a weapon, stop. I know it feels like you're taking the high road. I know it feels like you're being mature by not engaging, but you're not. You're being cruel. You're punishing your partner for existing. Learn to say, I need some time to think, but I'll come back and we can talk. And then actually come back. Don't disappear for days. Don't make them chase you. Be an adult and face the conversation. If you're expecting your spouse to be everything to you, stop. They can't be. No one person can meet every single need you have. Build a life outside your marriage. Have friends, have hobbies, have things that are yours. Not because you don't love your spouse, but because you're a whole person who exists independently of them. And they need the same thing. Let them have their own life. Don't make them feel guilty for wanting something that's theirs. If you're staying together but you're not happy, ask yourself why. Is it because you're committed to making it work? Or is it because you're afraid of what leaving would look like? There's a difference. Commitment means actively choosing your partner and working through problems. Fear means enduring a life you don't want because change feels too hard. Margaret and I stayed for commitment, but we weren't happy for most of those years. And staying isn't enough. You have to build something worth staying for. Call your spouse right now, or if you're with them, put down your phone and actually talk to them. Tell them one thing you appreciate about them. Ask them one real question about their day and actually listen to the answer. Make a plan to go on a date, even if it's just a walk around the block. Do something, anything, that reminds both of you why you chose each other in the first place. Margaret and I sit on our porch most evenings now. We don't always talk. Sometimes we just sit in silence, watching the sun go down. But it's a comfortable silence, not the punishing silence of our earlier years. It's the silence of two people who've been through everything together and have finally found peace. She'll reach over sometimes and take my hand, and I'll squeeze back. And in those moments, I'm grateful. Grateful we made it. Grateful we didn't give up. Grateful for the years we have left. But I'm also filled with regret for all the years we wasted. All the evenings we could have spent like this, content and connected, instead of angry and resentful. You don't get those years back. Once they're gone, they're gone. So don't waste them. Don't wait until you're 82 and you've had a heart attack to realize that the person next to you is the most important thing in your life. Don't wait until you've spent 53 years making each other miserable to figure out that happiness was always available if you'd just been willing to do the work. Do the work now. Have the hard conversations now. Let go of the resentments now. Build the life you want now. Because time doesn't wait, and one day you'll run out of it, and all you'll have left are memories. And the question is, what kind of memories do you want to have? Memories of a lifetime spent fighting and resenting and enduring, or memories of a lifetime spent choosing each other even when it was hard? Margaret is calling me in for dinner now. 58 years, and she still makes my favorite meal on Fridays. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Same meal she made the first week we were married. Some things don't change, but we have. We've changed so much. We're not the angry, resentful people we were 10 years ago. We're not even the scared, lost people we were 5 years ago. We're just two people who finally figured out how to love each other well, and I'm grateful for that. But I wish we'd figured it out sooner. Don't make our mistakes. Learn from them. Your marriage is worth the work. Your spouse is worth the effort. And you're worth the vulnerability it takes to build something real. Do it now, before it's too late, because it's later than you think.